Namibia is full of amazing people, whether local or visiting. Join us for the conversation, where we discuss these incredible projects, interesting topics, and what makes Namibia so special. Welcome to another episode of The Conversation with Gondwana Collection Namibia. Today we go big and we go far. In fact, we're leaving planet Gondwana and planet Earth behind us, and we're going to the stars. We are in very, very capable hands to guide us on the journey today. In Marc Klein Wolt, Marc, all the way from the Netherlands, even though he's kind of semi-Namibian by now. Marc, welcome to the conversation. And then we're also lucky to have Dr. Sisco Auala, who specializes in indigenous knowledge of astronomy in Namibia. But can I please ask you to introduce yourselves? If we can start with you, Dr. Sisco.
My name is Sisco. I'm Namibian, born in the northern part of Namibia in a town called Onipa, very close to Ondangwa. And when I was about 5 years old, I moved down to the southern part of Namibia, Oraniemund. That's where I went to school. And then I moved to Windhoek for high school, for St. Taurus. And thereafter, I moved to South Africa. So most of my adult life was in South Africa. That's where I went to university. Came back to Namibia and went back again to South Africa, and I worked in Europe. So now, just before COVID, I came back home permanently. And my background is actually in tourism. I studied tourism from undergrad to postgrad, did a PhD at Nelson Mandela University in community-based tourism development. And now I came back to Namibia after I did my PhD, and I'm ready now to contribute to my country, especially in relation to tourism development and working with indigenous communities.
Marc, and your story?
My story, it started in 1974, born in a town called Enschede in the Netherlands, near the German border, and then moved to do astronomy in Amsterdam at the university. Lived in Amsterdam and Haarlem, now living in Haarlem, which is a city next to Amsterdam. Very pretty, nice place. And working at the university right now, University of Nijmegen, which is again close to the German border, so I cross the country every now and then. And in between, I worked in industry as well, and worked for NASA, Goddard Space Flight Center, on studies of black holes. Currently, I'm assistant professor at Radboud University, and director of the radio lab, which I founded in 2015. And that's a lab that's developing instrumentation for astronomy, both on the ground, so telescopes like the Africa Millimetre Telescope here in Namibia that we're trying to establish, but also in space. So I have instruments actually behind the moon on a Chinese satellite, close to the sun, Jupiter, and Mercury. That's kind of interesting to have that. And yeah, we are here to. I'm here now to steer the let's say the AMT project, the Africa Millimetre Telescope project, in the right direction, and working with the team here together with the University of Namibia and the team that I have back in the Netherlands.
Tell us more about that project. I think there are big things happening in our backyards, yes. and us ordinary Namibians, we don't know a lot about that, but it's very, very exciting.
Yeah, it's happening in Namibia. It's going to happen in Namibia, and Namibia can play a huge role into this. And I think that's probably the most exciting thing. But I can tell a little bit about the science that drives us, because eventually for us, especially when you build instruments, whether that's on the ground or in space, you always are driven by a science question, something that you want to investigate. And so we are part of what is called the Event Horizon Telescope project, which aims to image the black hole. And black holes are objects that do not emit any radiation, and they were never seen before. However, we found a way of imaging it. And that's because, let's say, the black hole in the center of our own Milky Way, our own galaxy, is slowly eating up the stars near the center of that black hole. And before the stars fall into the black hole, they emit a little bit of radiation. And we managed to image that for the very first time. And we actually saw the edge of the black hole for the very first time. And this was predicted by the theory of Einstein, So with this, we had another proof that that theory was correct, and we saw the black hole for the very first time. Now that's a science behind that. And why we want to build a telescope in Namibia is because that image, as beautiful as it is by itself, is not the whole story. Because we want to see how those stars are actually being devolved by the, eaten up by the black hole, and what theory drives that, how it best describes what actually happens. And for that, we don't need just an image, but we need to see a movie. We need to see how the matter flows as it falls into the black hole. And for that, we need a telescope in southern Africa. And we started on our journey, ended up in Namibia. And that's why we want to build a telescope in Namibia.
Sisco, Mark mentioned the word Milky Way. So I a while back read a book, something simple for a layman like myself, like Orion's Belt. That's how we grew up. That's those 30 stars next to each other. And I read that, but in African indigenous knowledge, it's not Orion's Belt, it's the 30 turtles. And my eyes opened and I said, wow, we are so... We come with a specific perspective because of specific knowledge, but I think there's a whole world out there, and through your work and your studies and your research, also through community tourism, you've started to opening up that door. Can you share a bit more in terms of that?
Maybe I can just share how I got involved into this. As I mentioned, my background is in community-based tourism, and since I was young, actually, before we moved to Rajimund, my uncle was very good with stars, star knowledge. And when I was young, I remember sitting around the fire, and he used to tell us stories about the different constellations. And I can't remember all the stories now, but I just remember lying on my back and watching the marvelous dark skies. And even some stories were not really related to the stars, but it was folktale, African folktale that he would tell us. Like in Oshuambo, you have Kanje, Nachimbungo, and so it was stories. And then when you're looking up there, lying on your back as a young person, you start imagining your own constellation and making up your own constellation. So it was kind of the university that time, because it really stimulates your curiosity as a young person. And that was part of how in ancient times children were educated through the stories and the myths about the night skies, and it was done at night. And so when I moved to Rajimund, I lost touch, because obviously there wasn't the visible, beautiful night skies that I used to. And I only got back into the night sky actually just during COVID. I met astrophysicist from University of Oxford, Hannah Douglas. She came to University of Namibia to work for a program with Professor Michael Becker's team. And then she introduced me back to the night sky. And we started talking about, with my background in community-based tourism, and she as an astrophysicist, we thought we could get together and start working on how we can try and find ways to preserve Namibian indigenous knowledge. And we embarked on a research project, and we also involved a historian from University of Namibia, and Pandula Shiweda. So we embarked on a small research to do with dark sky tourism. I can explain the difference between, there's always a confusion between dark sky tourism and astrotourism, which astrotourism actually you can experience during the daytime as well, because it relates to space tourism, astrophotography, or observing observatories. But dark sky tourism, you can only experience at night. And this is where you can actually involve indigenous communities, because it's a free resource. You don't need to pay entrance fees to see the night skies like you have to go to a game park. It's free, and they can utilize this resource for sustainable development. So the whole emphasis was now we embarked on this dark sky, working with the Nyanyai Conservancy, and I've been working with the Nyanyai Conservancy since then, and I've been continuing doing research. So it started with dark sky tourism, seeing whether this type of tourism can contribute to benefit rural communities in Namibia. And then why doing that research, I got into Indigenous astronomy. Because they were telling us more about Indigenous myths and stories than actually tourism. And I thought, this is actually a good idea and content that we can use to record this Indigenous knowledge and train some of the local guides to use this interpretation into dark sky tourism experiences. Because in Namibia, tourism has always been existing. Stargazing is always being offered. But there was no Namibian interpretation of the night sky. And it's dying out. People don't talk about it. People don't. Even me, I've lost most of the names of the stars in my language. I just remember a few. I remember a few of them. And we need to preserve this knowledge. And I thought tourism could be a tool to use to preserve this knowledge, because this knowledge obviously has not received any recognition in modern science. And in the curriculum as well, we don't teach it. I mean, when I went to primary school in Oranjemund in OPS, we were taught about the universe, but there was no cultural interpretation of my culture that I learned from my uncle. I didn't hear about that. So I didn't find interest in studying astronomy or science.
I think it's such a beautiful story. We are blessed in this country with dark skies, with limited light pollution, but to add and to enrich those experiences with the indigenous knowledge. Our forefathers have been stargazing for millennia, like you've said, and for good people like you to both capture it and to preserve that, because if we don't do it, it will all be lost.
Yeah. No, it's really, I agree, it's really important. And the interesting thing for us is how we connect is we are trying to do this project for science, but we always, from the start, imagined that we would like to have an impact on the country as well. So we started an education part of the project at the same time. So we brought a mobile planetarium to Namibia where school kids can go in and experience the universe as we see it, and you can even travel through the universe. It's an interactive thing, and you can use that as a tool for education or to put this, imagination in people's minds that the universe is much bigger than just this small little Earth, and give us the idea of what is our place in the universe. And that's for everyone, regardless of if you want to be an astronomer or a scientist. That's important to know, right? But the interesting thing here is that as we were doing this, we found out that if we want to make this happen and this let's say, put that idea in children's mind, we need to connect to them at the right level with the right kind of information. And not only to the kids in the schools, but also to the teachers and to the people in the local communities. And the only way to do that is to talk about the universe as they see it. And even though some of that knowledge is slowly disappearing, people look at the night sky in Namibia in a different way than that we do that. And it's kind of fascinating, and I hadn't really thought about this, but what we learned in high school and even at university, how does the sky look like, what are the star signs, that's a Western image that we have. And I always thought, so that's what we universally agree upon, right? These are the star signs. Yeah. But that's not the case. You have different star signs here in Namibia. And that's fascinating, right? So we need to tell that story as well. So what we're trying to do right now is to see whether we can take some of those stories, that indigenous knowledge, and incorporate that into the education program that we're trying to develop right now and bring that to schools. And the whole goal is for us to get more people interested in fundamental science, in engineering, in that kind of topics, and train the next generation to be part of the future of Namibia. And of course, we want some of them to be part of our telescope project, right? So that will be very cool. And that's actually happening right now as we speak. But using that knowledge is really important.
I love how you take the science behind it and you enrich it. with the local stories, which is more stories and the myths around it. I mean, I would love to read about that, to see the night sky through the eyes of our forefathers, which is a completely different perspective.
And just imagine, so we are trying to build this telescope either on or near the Gamsberg Mountain, right? So we have 2 locations right now. We're investigating which one is best. We need to build a road up the mountain, which takes a lot of time and money. So we're not sure whether we could do that. If we get enough support, then maybe we'll make it. Otherwise, we go to an alternative location. But just imagine we do it on the top of the mountain, right? And we were just out there on Monday. You're on this flat top mountain, which is like 3 kilometers long and about 400 meters wide. And you look out of the plains of Namibia, which is like this fascinating view. Just imagine that the sun goes down and all of a sudden the Milky Way goes on and you see all the stars from that point. That's just, mind-blowing. It's like you can almost touch it. What I find fascinating is to explain to kids, to everyone actually, that the stars that we see, most of them that we see, are part of the galaxy of which we are part of, right? So we are 200 million stars rotating around a central black hole, the black hole that we try to image, right? Those 200 million stars are projected on the night sky in the band of the Milky Way. So this white glow is the thing that we are part of. It's not something out there, but it's part of us. It's part of our backyard, our astronomical backyard, right? And this gives you also a sense of how big we are, because we're just we're just a small little star, part of 200 million other stars, and there are probably 400 billion other galaxies in the universe. So this is just giving you a sense of what we are, and just explaining that to kids. I think that is just amazing.
I love that, and how that speaks, especially to our rural Namibia.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of our responsibility as adults is to widen the horizons, so to speak, of our children. And you did it now so beautiful, Mark, where it is so majestic, it is so big, it is so beautiful, and we live in a country where you can see that every night almost because of not a lot of pollution and vast open spaces.
I mean, just realize that we are coming from the Netherlands, from Europe, here to Namibia for your natural resources. The night sky, the dark skies that you have, the dry environment in the desert, that's why we come here. It's beautiful, it's pristine. We should keep it like that, right? That's why we also come here. So this is something you as Namibians should be very proud of, because there are not many places like that in the world. And creating a dark sky reserve or a natural reserve around the telescope that we want to build there is something that I really would like to do, because we need to preserve that area. It's just like I'm also involved in projects at the moon. And there I'm going to do actually the same thing. We want to keep the moon as it is, because we can use it for science, and we need to preserve it for prosperity, for the next generations. And it's the same for Namibia. And so we come here for the dark sky. And actually, I haven't even said that, but we're doing this project. We want to build that telescope on the mountain. But just imagine what will happen when we manage to put a road up the mountain and create a facility there. Then Namibia will own one of the best places for astronomy in the world. People have recognized this mountain as being one of the best places to do astronomy already for more than 50 years. So once we build a road there, and we will be the first project on that mountain, you guys, you have one of the best places for science in the world. Just think about what will happen to the international community of astronomers that want to build a new telescope. Namibia is going to be high on their list. They're going to come here. They will bring people. They will bring funding, new opportunities, developments. I mean, this is going to boost the country like you've never seen before.
Mark, you've mentioned it. Something that I learned in tourism, Sisco, also is that you think when you build a lodge out there in rural Namibia, you just build a lodge, but the but the responsibility and the sensitivity that comes with putting up infrastructure in the middle of nowhere regarding your light pollution.
Yeah.
You know, the way you position your lights, because it is something that you become sensitive about.
Yeah.
If you spend time out there in rural Namibia, because unfortunately some lights that are not well positioned, you see that for
far away.
Far away.
Yeah.
And so the responsibility on all of us as Namibians, not only in tourism, to really to take that in mind when you do development in rural Namibia. But Marc, you've said it to some extent. Why Namibia? Is it so conducive in terms of the night sky?
Yes. So it's the atmospheric conditions in Namibia are ideal. And you have high mountains. Astronomers like to build stuff in high mountains because then we have less atmosphere, and the atmosphere works like imagine you dive into the pool on a sunny day and you sit at the bottom of the pool and you look up to the sun or to maybe your friend standing at the edge of the pool. You see his image of the sun moving because of the water. So now the water is the atmosphere, right, on our planet. So if we have less water, less atmosphere, we don't see the stars moving like that. So the less air we have, the better. And this is mostly the case for optical astronomy. So if you want to build an optical telescope, you want to go to a high place that is dry, where the weather conditions are stable, and you have not a lot of clouds forming during the day, so you can do nice observations. For radio astronomy, because we're building a radio telescope on the top of the mountain, for us, and in particular for the let's say the frequencies at which we want to observe, at which we want to see the black hole, it's the amount of water vapor in the air that is important. And there again, if you have less atmosphere above you, then you have less water vapor, and then you actually get more radiation, and that's what we need. So that's one thing. The conditions are ideal, but the other thing is, from Namibia, from this position, you see the center of our galaxy going right overhead. So you can observe it for a very long time. Like from the Netherlands, we hardly see the center of our galaxy. We can't see it, so we're not going to build there. And by the way, we have too much water anyway, so we can't do that. And then the other aspect is, if you look at the international global network of telescopes that are currently being part of this network of telescopes that make these images, they will all work together as a virtual telescope the size of the Earth. But if you look at that network, there's kind of a hole in that network, and that's in the region of Southern Africa. If we manage to fill that hole, then we can keep on observing for a very long time. So we've done simulations. This single telescope in Namibia can not perform, but almost replace the 64 dishes that are in the Chilean desert. So if that's 64 dishes of similar size as what we want to build here, they all work together. But if they don't perform, but we are in the network, then the network can still make the image. Just one single telescope in Namibia because of its location. And I think that's the power of this. So we really, really want to go here and use the unique conditions that you have here in Namibia.
Recently, you hosted our president.
Yes, I did.
In the Netherlands.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, Namibia is involved in together with the Netherlands in a couple of projects, and one is of course on green hydrogen. We've all heard about this, but fortunately the president also recognizes our project that we do, and the collaboration that my university, Radboud University, and UNAM has, and of course also in his position as chancellor of UNAM, he decided to pay us a visit. And also, I think that underlines the importance that he sees in this project, and I think he also sees the potential of bringing such a project to Namibia in terms of education development and in terms of capacity development, of skill development. Using a project like this requires people that understand engineering, people that understand making software, doing data analysis, doing visualization, all kinds of skills that you need in your industry here in Namibia. And you can use a project like this to develop that. And, if we have like 20 students doing this in Namibia at UNAM, or even more, 40 or 50, then a small fraction of that will go on in astronomy, but the rest will go into industry. And those are the kind of people you need to solve your everyday problems. So he understands that, Namibia investing into this project will gain them a lot. And that's why he came to us. And that's, of course, a privilege because, he went to the Green Hydrogen Summit in Rotterdam, in the port of Rotterdam. And he visited the king, I believe, and then he came to us. So I was kind of, I felt very special.
Sisco, I think Marcus said it. And I love the project that you've been working on together as well with the planetarium, and especially with the focus on schools, because that is where it starts.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that the Namibian child gets to know more about this, and more importantly, starts dreaming about this possible future?
I think what we need to start is trying to document some of our indigenous knowledge that we have of astronomy. And in that way, like for example, with the planetarium that the AMT project has created, which is an excellent experience. I've been in the planetarium a couple of times. And
you're privileged.
Yes, but what is missing in the narrative of the planetarium is the Namibian stories.
Yes.
Yeah, Namibian's interpretation. And all of us, we have many ethnic groups in Namibia, and different parts of the country have different interpretation and different names of the stars. And if we can record that, document that, and create narratives and stories around the different ethnic groups and how they related to the night sky, and it will entice an interest in the children when they are visiting the planetarium. And also we are working on another project with Aalborg University, with Professor Casper and Professor Henke from NUST, trying to use a VR technology to try and interpret some of these stories. It's still working in progress. So, and maybe this type of technology can also be used to educate school children in a different type of way, and it will create interest because now they can relate science, modern astronomy, to their own cultural interpretation. And that would definitely entice an interest in them in STEM and the study of modern astronomy. So I think it's very important. And maybe later on we can actually include this into curriculums. And for my background in tourism, I actually want to use this content to teach the tour guides, the local tour guides, so they can have this content and tell the Namibian narratives, When the tourists are coming and they're sitting around the fire at lodges, they experience a beautiful night sky, but there's nobody actually sharing Namibian stories to do with the night sky. So it would be very interesting product, and if we can get local guides to work and try to develop dark sky tourism in Namibia as a resource, because we always concentrate of the terrestrial, what we have here on Earth, on the ground, but we forget to look up and realize that Namibia, as you said, we're one of the best countries in the world with the most pristine, unpolluted night sky. It's a resource that we are given for free, and we should use it to the maximum responsibly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I like what you said. I mean, I was always under the impression that it is my, let's say, part of my work that I look up to the skies. And I was at the Dark Sky meeting in Oxford a couple of years back. When we also met.
Together, we were there together.
We met there, I think, for the first time.
For the first time we met.
And I think I was apart from Hannah, I was the only astronomer that was invited. And there were historians and all kinds of people from different disciplines thinking about the night sky and what it does to us as human beings. And it was during that meeting, which was like, was it 2 or 3 years ago or more longer?
2021.
Yeah. So it was only then I realized that for me the night sky is not my profession. It's part of my environment. It was the first time I realized that I'm a nature lover. I run, I cycle, I hike, I climb, do all these things. For me, nature is really important. But it doesn't stop at the horizon. It continues. And I always look up to the sky. I always look to the stars. I've done that ever since I was a small boy. Even though in the Netherlands we don't have such beautiful skies as you have here. But for me, it's just an extension of our environment. And with that comes the Milky Way, of which we are part of. And if you see that in a bigger picture, then it's just mind-boggling. But so for me, that's really important. But can I ask a question? Because
Sure.
I remember you saying that all these stories, these indigenous stories that Namibia has, have not been recorded because they're not being written down. But how can we record it, or how can we extract it? Is it maybe through music or songs, or?
This is where tourism plays a role.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you look at how in African history and African knowledge systems, knowledge was always transferred through oral tradition.
Yeah.
It wasn't written down.
No.
And obviously maybe there's a reason for it that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And tourism provides an opportunity to keep this knowledge in
tell
its
the
authentic
stories.
way. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can use it still through storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's authentic way of transmitting this knowledge as it was done in the original ways of our ancestors in ancient times.
Yeah.
And it's also done through maybe dances. Like, for example, if tourists are coming to a astro campsite somewhere in the Kunene, and they come in to listen to what of these astro guides are telling about the interpretation of the night sky.
Yeah.
They can do it through storytelling. They can do it through a dance. They can even use artwork to explain how the Big Bang came about according to their culture. You know, that's fascinating.
I love how that all brings us back to connection. About storytelling and connection, and that is so important to us at Gondwana as well. We always say have a story to tell, and that's what you also said, Mark. We're all part of the same system. We are also connected. We live in a world where we're very connected and very disconnected, and to connect back to those authentic stories, because we also see more and more that people, yes, they visit locations, but they actually want an experience. They want a connection to the local knowledge, the local culture, the local perspectives. I think it's so important. I think that is why tourism is kind of fundamental to human relations, because the more we interact, the more we understand each other, and the more that we respect each other. And I love that. I love how you see the tour guides as almost the guardians, of this authentic storytelling. And it's so important that we invest in that, because, like you said, it's not one Namibian perspective. It's also within Namibia. It is the different cultural perspectives and experiences.
And it's also to involve actually the local guides from that area. Like, for example, with the project that I'm working with, I'm planning to work with the Nyanya, the youth. And it's them who are actually going to collect more of these stories from their elders, and they will be interpreting their stories. And the interesting part is, when I do this research, I realize not everything is for tourism consumption. Some information is sacred, and it's not to be shared.
Not to be shared.
Yes.
Secrets.
Secrets of the universe.
We know all about that.
And it's what the elders will teach the youth what to share in this type of knowledge. And it's fascinating.
I also ask you about this music because, or the stories, because it reminded me of when you learn about the Middle Ages, how it was in Europe. You had people going from town to town to sing songs about what happened, right? It's basically, news reporters telling stories. And that's the way that stories were told in the past, and it almost is similar to that. And I'm there's another angle to this. I'm friends with Shishani, the Namibian singer. We became friends a couple of years ago when we performed together. And one of the things that she's now trying to do is finding these stories and making music with that. And we've performed together in the Netherlands for a huge audience where I was completely out of my comfort zone because I'm not a musician. I don't sing. I don't all these things. But she's amazing, right? So I wrote a little poem about how I see the night sky, and that's purely my perspective. But it resembles the stories that the elders would probably have at these rural locations about how they see the night sky. So I just explained to me what it is when I go running in the desert at night and what happens to me. And I tell that story, and she makes music. And I think that's a wonderful way of sharing the knowledge that we have and the experience that we have.
Yeah, because in African, when I'm reading up more about indigenous knowledge and how we're trying to transfer this knowledge through, as an academic, you want to write a research paper and you want to document your work and write a book about it. And when you actually work with these indigenous knowledge holders, they have another perspective of how the knowledge should be transferred. And certain knowledge is not to be documented, and we respect that. And I mean, with indigenous knowledge of astronomy, it really comes a long way. Like they say, it's actually the foundation of they say modern, some perspective of modern astronomy.
It is.
If we look back at it, and we're losing this knowledge, we are not appreciating it. And even in Namibia, the San people have had a connection with the night sky, and it's more than they had traditional calendars, and in other indigenous communities away in Namibia, even the Himbas. I mean, the Himbas, I read about the Himbas that they use the intestines of animals to predict the weather. That is their knowledge. So it's just interesting to really dig into these stories and to these myths. Because they said knowledge begins with myths.
And
so
then
it's very interesting.
To keep it alive and to share it, exactly. Marc, if Sisco is successful and all of us are successful in the planetarium in terms of igniting this curiosity and igniting this passion, how do you see the future of your project, and how can that impact the youth of Namibia today regarding the future of dream a little?
No, it's a big question. How do you see the future? I thought about this from the beginning, and we as I said before, we want to build this telescope to do science, but it's my dream that this telescope is not operated by us; it's operated by Namibians, and I would love to have people that were got the spark of the engagement through our mobile planetarium, the stories that Sisco is retrieving. And thought, maybe I can become the astronomer or the engineer or the manager or whatever to be involved in this big project. So I would like to have this telescope standing in Namibia, being operated, maintained by the Namibians, and they benefit from that. And we get some data out of it. We do our science, that's perfect, but the rest should go to the country. That's what I would like to see.
How do you see the next few months in terms of your project?
Okay, this is also a tricky question. My project manager is going to kill me. But look, we would have loved to have this thing already there, right? And if anything, if I could make a decision today, we could put even the telescope next to the mountain because we have the funding to build a telescope. We could do it. We could start today, or even tomorrow, possibly tomorrow. But we have to make a decision on where we put the telescope, and that's going to take a couple of months. And we've placed test equipment on the mountain and next to the mountain at the Hess site to see what's the difference in quality. And the decision on that will probably come in the first quarter next year. From that point on, we have the site, and if then we can build directly on the site next to the mountain, that will take us another 2 years. If we go to the top of the mountain, then we need to start very quickly on building the road and you're paving the way, making the infrastructure ready to put the telescope there. And that will probably take a year or two extra. So that's a little bit the timeline that I have. And
if people want to do some more research or about this project, or even get involved, what resources can you point them to?
Well, we have a website. We have an Instagram page that's called Black Hole Hunters that basically follows the whole project and everything that we do. We have my good friend and colleague Zandre Duverhagen sitting here, who's coordinating our mobile planetarium program, but is also my point of contact here. So you can always reach out to him. If you want to get the planetarium to your school, just give us a call and we'll make it happen. Those are the kind of resources that we have. We have our team at UNAM, of course. Professor Michael Bakkers, that was mentioned before, is a good friend and colleague who's also leading the science efforts here in Namibia. So you can reach out to them as well, and to myself. That's I'm trying to be here as often as I can in my second homeland.
I really enjoyed this. Sisco, Marc. Sisco, thank you for the good work that you do and continue to do to preserve and to capture those that should be captured, stories and myths, and to share and to enrich, I think, the experience of both Namibians, but also to our visitors. And Marc, thank you also for your friendship to Gondwana as well. We've been coming a long way, yes. And I'm looking forward to this very, very exciting future where we literally unlock the horizons, and from your lips to God's ears regarding Namibians and their role in this going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.